Welcome to Perfectly Paranormal, Episode 8. My name's Annaschmidt, and I'm here every week to share with you true paranormal encounters and information about devils, demons, and dark energy beings that no one else talks about. And today we're going to look at physical tactics on the body that dark energies use to frighten us. So let's get this supernatural situation underway with a story from 2019 called Bragging Ken and His Oversized Ego. Now, a work colleague who I'm going to call Ken messaged me via email to discuss a location where he'd been to do what he called an exorcism of a property. He quite proudly stated that he'd gone through the building top to bottom, spraying holy water in every room, brandishing a cross, and saying multiple prayers to expel devils and demons from the large multi-storied building. Now, Ken was new to clearing properties of supernatural influences, as I like to call them, and he messaged me because he knew that I understood the paranormal and the behaviours of dark energy beings. Ken was having doubts about whether he'd actually cleared the detrimental beings lurking upstairs and downstairs in that house, or had he just annoyed them? Ken's doubts stemmed from conversations with a friend of his who lived in that building. He said there was still paranormal happenings going on during the day, but mostly at night, and people were hearing constant door slamming, doorknobs turning and rattling, mysterious footsteps on the stairs, and strange walking and stopping outside people's bedrooms. Some sleepy folk said that they would hear raspy voices whispering in the hallway when everyone else was in bed. Other residents would feel sudden movements on their beds and creepy whispering right next to their pillows, which woke them up with quite a start. The occupants of the home were upset. They were feeling really edgy and becoming more and more troubled by these continuous, unexplained disruptions during the night. Now, Ken emailed me the address of the location, which I'm not going to share today because it is a rather well-known haunted building in the United States. And that sharing of information was too much for these dark entities that lived at that property. And this is where everything went seriously downhill. Now let's backtrack for a minute so you can understand where the next part of this story is going. I am what I call super sensitive to feeling energy. The more of this house clearing work and personal energy clearing work I do, I'm becoming more and more sensitive. So in a way it's good because I can share information with you, but in a way it's bad because I'm kind of limited to where I can go and what I can do. Anyway, let's get back to the story. I can feel detrimental energy coming through text messages, phone calls, emails, social media, websites, in person through photos and addresses. And when I glanced at this particular address for a second or two, I had no idea at the time of its detrimental nature. But my body started reacting. I had that sort of sick feeling in my mind and in my stomach, and my head was spinning. And in those days, my saliva glands would start working overtime. So as I'm feeling these symptoms, I'm thinking in my head, what hellish doorway had Ken opened by sending me this address? had also bragged to another colleague on the other side of the world about being in this particular well-haunted building, and he was unaware of how his continuous bragging was really upsetting these dark entities at that location more and more. The colleague and I would email each other quite often for work purposes, and over the next few days we started sharing sudden strange happenings that we were both experiencing in our homes and to us personally. Now, we were confused as to what was causing this, and we hadn't connected the dots yet that the shared information about this property with the dark past was actually the cause of all these issues that I'm going to outline for you now. Now, we experienced changes that were really out of character for both of us, such as random bouts of extreme brain fog. Our dreams were constantly erratic and nightmarish is the only way to describe them. Like something out of a horror movie. It's just, I can still remember some of them now, and this is quite a while ago that we experienced this happening. And I would experience sudden jolts, poking, prodding in bed. And I even experienced sudden electric shocks on my eyelids, which I found quite confronting. Now, demonic level beings love using electric shocks. I've experienced this quite a few times now, and it is quite shocking, no pun intended, at the time. When you're in bed and you're half asleep and all of a sudden you get this really sudden, shocking pulse that runs through your lower eyelid. It's hard to explain it unless you've actually experienced it. So, in our homes, items were randomly breaking and household electrical problems occurred which we'd never had an issue with before in the past. And I could also feel someone watching me everywhere I went in my home. But at that time, I couldn't pinpoint exactly where these energetic intruders were coming from. Now, as you'll hear in this podcast, I always talk about the beings that come and go in my house, and I do energetic checks on my home probably 2 or 3 times a day. So the house is really clean. But these beings were projecting themselves from a distance, and they were a damn nuisance. And after a week of no sleep and feeling quite stressed and energetically exhausted, I sat at my work desk one morning thinking, what the heck is going on? And suddenly in my mind, I saw a fleeting image of Ken's email. And it dawned on me that the dark entities at that aforementioned location were attacking us long distance. They were using energetic tactics in an attempt to frighten both myself and my work colleague, who they thought were going to conduct long-distance energy clearings on the land and in the building where these energy beings were located. And they were in an uproar. So as I know now, in 2023, this is quite common. Energy beings will visit me as I'm doing a Zoom call with a client. They're just checking me out. And I will quite often have a conversation. If you saw me doing it, you would think I was a little bit nutty. I'll have a conversation out loud, sitting, talking to nobody, but I will address the beings at a particular property. And I will say that I'm being professionally employed to clean and clear this property of all paranormal beings that shouldn't be there, and any energetic imprints keeping them attached to the property. And I will say to them that they will be treated with respect and no harm comes to them. And I find that quite often this will settle their nerves or settle their expectations about what is actually going to happen at the time. Because quite often these beings have experienced people going into these locations in person and being rude, being disrespectful, treating them like some sort of circus act during paranormal investigations or paranormal tours of properties. And they really get quite upset, as you could imagine, So I take a different approach when I work with these beings, and I learn something new every time that I do one of these house clearings or a personal energy clearing. Now, where was I? What to do in this situation? And I decided that I needed to have a conversation with them, because I know that energy beings are always listening to us through all modes of communication, whether it be emails, whether it be Zoom calls, talking in person. They have always got paranormal radar sensing for people who are talking about them. So I sat quietly and I spoke out loud in a calm and humble voice. And I stated that neither my overseas colleague nor myself had any intention of energetically clearing that property, and that they were completely safe there. Now, I repeated this statement 3 times. I don't know why, I just did, because I really like to get the message across. And then I very nicely asked them to leave my home. And within probably about 2 hours, there was no more strange symptoms. Both my work colleague in the UK and myself experienced massive improvements in our mental energy. There was no more strange physical symptoms. I didn't have any sleep issues, and the energy of our homes returned to normal. And I'm sitting there thinking, what a relief. And solutions to paranormal problems are often far simpler than we humans make them out to be. Now, this experience was a vital lesson in not getting involved in the darker realms just for the sake of it, for egotistical reasons, or because you want to experience demonic interactions, such as Ken had on his mind. People have no idea what they are getting themselves into. They see what people do in the movies and they think, oh, that looks fun, that looks cool. I'm going to do that with some mates on a Saturday afternoon. But these beings are dangerous. You treat them with respect and you will get pretty good results. But they read your energy. They know if you're working through ego. They know if you genuinely want to help them. Now, if these otherworldly entities, as I call them sometimes, feel that you're a threat, they're going to come looking for you, and they will plague you day and night in an attempt to wear you down, mentally, emotionally, and sometimes physically. And they will use your fears against you. Now, I do hope for Ken's sake that even though he told me he wanted to return to that property and have another go, were his words, that he didn't actually do it because the dark entities there may not have been so lenient on him the second time. Well, I hope you found that interesting. I learnt a lot from that experience about how energy beings can perceive us from a distance, and that with making a very humble apology, you can actually get yourself out of quite a sticky situation. Oh, and don't forget, if you like the content of this podcast and you don't want to miss any future episodes, please subscribe. And you can share with your friends so we can get the message out there. We can spread the message about these paranormal pranksters and what they get up to in our homes. I would really appreciate it. And now I'm going to share with you some of the many, many signs and symptoms of paranormal presence and the physical tactics on the body that these tricky supernatural entities use to frighten us. This information shared today has come from my many years and actually decades of interaction with these beings and understanding right from childhood how they can actually affect us. So depending on how threatened these beings feel can strongly dictate the level of energetic force that they put into their attacks. These beings are pure energy, so to create an action or a tactic in our 3D physical world takes a lot of energy out of them. So generally their energetic tactics they'll last for about 2 to 3 seconds. You'll get these bursts of something happening. Now, we've all experienced what I call body jolts when we're relaxing into sleeping or we're moving into different sleeping states. Our body will make that sort of sudden dropping or that jolting kind of motion. But if these movements are harsh or they're repetitive or increasing in intensity, something energetic may be trying to get your attention. Now, I've experienced physical interactions such as, you ready for the very long list? And you may have actually experienced some of these yourself and could not put a rational cause on them. I've experienced nudging, pulling on my limbs, generally my ankles, pulling on my hair or tugging on my clothing. They can shove, pinch or poke us on the body. You can, as I've mentioned already, experience random electric shocks or zaps, usually on the legs or arms, but not always. The severity of the zap can be slight or intense, depending on the intent of the dark energy being delivering that blast of energy. Now, one of my clients reported to me how unexplainable scratches appeared on her forearm one day in front of friends. They're sitting there watching a movie and she was feeling uncomfortable on her left forearm and she was about to touch it when she looked down and there was this long red scratch that appeared. And one of her friends screamed because she saw this scratch come out of nowhere. No one physical did this. And when I worked with that lady, she actually had some demonic level beings that had entered her energy field for a particular reason. Once these beings were removed and what they had attached to within her energy field, she didn't experience those scratches again. And sometimes I find that people actually wake up with scratches on their body that they can't put a rational cause to. You know, they haven't got sharp fingernails, that the cat's not sleeping in the bed with them, you know, their partner was away. And all of a sudden they've got all these scratches all over them, or bruises. Bruises is another one. Unless you're someone that's doing a lot of heavy manual work where you get bumped all the time and your body actually creates those bruises, sometimes paranormal beings, when they nudge you, can actually leave a bruise behind. Now, this symptom is something that people report quite often. They experience feelings of heaviness on their chest. Now, if this isn't a medical condition and you've been checked by your doctor, then it can be the presence of paranormal beings, because everybody's body is going to react differently to these beings being present. And sometimes when people are lying in bed, they'll feel this pressure on their chest, you know, and it can inhibit their breathing or actually sleeping or staying asleep. But one friend of mine experienced heavy pressure on her chest one night during a paranormal investigation that she and I were doing. We'd been given access to go down into a basement of a very, very old building. And we were very polite and very respectful, you know, set up some of our paranormal gadgets. And we were just standing there, waiting to see if we got any reactions. And we were talking to the beings, and we were just talking amongst ourselves. And all of a sudden she looked at me, and I could just see her eyes in the darkness. And she said, "Oh, my chest. Wow, geez, my chest really, really hurts." And I said to her, "Look, do we need to leave? Do you need to sit down? Are you having a medical issue?" And she's like, No. It was really, really sudden. And we stood there for about 3 to 4 minutes, and I'm thinking, I need to take her back upstairs. We need to go up into the light and go and sit down in the dining room or the reception area of this building. And then she looked at me and she was like, "Oh, it's passed. It's gone." So I said to her that was the presence of a paranormal being letting her know that it was there, and that was her body's reaction. Sometimes people will cough, which is not a physical tactic on the body, but sometimes people's bodies will react in lots of different ways to the presence of paranormal beings. And I'm going to be talking about this a lot through these podcast episodes. So she experienced that chest heaviness again, not in the basement, but as we were going up the stairs from the basement. And I actually felt quite unwell in that particular area. So that tells me that something has occurred in or near the basement of that very old building. Now, this building is probably 250 years old, which is pretty old for Tasmania. This was a local experience. And it said to me that there was something that had occurred there in the past. Now, I didn't do any energetic work on that building because I need permission of the owners of the building. You can't go around just willy-nilly doing energy work without getting permission, because there's quite a strong karmic backlash for doing energetic work out of ego, which is what it would have been if I had have gone, "Oh yeah, I'm going to go in there and I'm going to clear out those demonic beings." I have to be professionally employed to do the work, talk to the beings, and then it runs really, really smoothly, and I don't get any karmic backlash. Now, this is a bit of a funny one. Sometimes you can feel quite intoxicated when paranormal beings are around. I had some girlfriends here yesterday, and we were talking about all things paranormal. And when you talk about these beings, they come and listen, right? They're not feeling threatened, but you put the vibe out there that you want to talk about them. They're going to come and listen to what you're saying. We were laughing and giggling, and I was sharing experiences, and they were sharing experiences. And I looked at one of the ladies and I said, "Look, I feel like I'm drunk." And I drink water. Water or herbal tea are my two beverages. And she's looking at me going, "Yeah, I feel a bit sort of strange in the head." And we didn't do anything. We just kept talking about what we're doing. And the strange paranormal intoxication stayed with us for the rest of the afternoon. And we were on a spiritual high. It was really, really quite funny. Now, as I'm on this spiritual high, I'm starting to slur my words, which if you've ever watched my YouTube channel, Annaschmidt, Paranormal Specialist, sometimes I make funny face movements, or my eyes will roll, or I kind of slur my words, or my mouth does funny movements. That's because these beings affect me in a very physical way, and my motor skills with my facial features can be quite disrupted, or I can't even think of the word right now. But yeah, it's really quite funny to see some of these things. And even during this podcast, you might hear me say a word in a slightly funny way. That's because I'm talking about the paranormal. And they're here watching me. And sometimes they'll get in my space because they love to see me get... in the old days, I used to get slightly stressed by my slurred words or my funny facial features or my funny words I say. Now I just laugh it off. So I'm sure they do it as part of their, what I call dark humour, which is a topic for another podcast episode. So where was I? I am getting distracted. I do this quite often. I call it my paranormal distraction technique. So like I just said, sometimes you'll experience slurred words, strange mouth movements, or you start biting your lip. Now, I am not a lip biter. When I eat, I am able to chew my food quite consistently without constantly biting the side of my mouth or biting my lip. But sometimes when I'm doing house clearing jobs or I'm getting ready to work with a client, I'll find that I get that strange sort of weird brain fog starts happening. And if I'm eating something, I'll start biting my lip all the time. Now, I don't do anything about it. I just make sure that I chew very slowly and very carefully so that I'm not actually creating any negative emotions around constantly biting my lip. And the other thing that I find happens to me quite physically is tripping over things, tripping over invisible objects, banging into walls. You know, I find myself walking with my arms swinging through a doorway, and I'll actually hit myself, and I'm like, what am I doing? And it's because these paranormal beings are around me, and I know that my body reacts in funny physical ways. Some people are affected mentally, some people are affected emotionally, or spiritually even. But I'm one of these people that does weird things like tripping over strange things, banging into things, dropping things. And I know that these are not my normal behaviours. This is the final example. Some people find that quite often they feel cold all the time. And it's not the temperature of the room, like they've got their heater on, or they've got layers and layers and layers of clothes on. But for some reason, they just feel cold. And they say that the coldness can be like really close to their body, as in within centimetres of their body, or it can be sort of within their energy field, which is up to about 60 centimetres to a metre from their body. So I hope you found this interesting today. I've got lots of things to share with you. I've got lots of personal information, and we're going to laugh a lot, and you might find that you're quite shocked by some of the information that I share. But it is all from my personal experiences or from client-based experiences that I've been given permission to share. And I always change people's names and locations and their genders sometimes too. So in episode 9, we're going to be looking at paranormal pranksters and their somewhat comical behaviours. And I'm going to share 2 real-life stories about dark energy beings and their sense of humour. Yes, you have heard me right. Dark energy beings have a sense of humour. Now, these stories are going to show a different side to these normally feared supernatural entities. So thank you for joining me today. Don't forget to send me your paranormal questions and your stories that you want to share with the world. Email me at spiritualbeing44@gmail.com. And for information on paranormal house clearings, you can visit my website. The address is in the description box. And I look forward to sharing this spooky space again with you next week. And remember, life is perfectly paranormal.